Hey guys, Jared, Transformational Coaching, Action is Transformation. In this video, we're going to get into how do you know if a relationship is really worth it to you. Every single day, I get comments, I get emails of people saying, I was in this relationship for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and they were this type of person. I didn't realize it till we were too far in the relationship, and then I was trapped in, and I didn't see it coming, and all this emotional baggage is created, and then there's a lot of guilt or shame because people feel like they betrayed the self, which is one of the worst things that we can do. So everything in the world is changing so quickly because of information and technology. Anyone has access to any type of information. Human beings are becoming so much more self-aware. We're taking on new identities, casting off old identities really quickly. We're reevaluating what it even means to be in a relationship and the purpose of it. So in this video, I'm just going to share with you some qualities and characteristics of a relationship that we want to be aware of before we decide to actually commit and go all in. So first off, what makes a relationship worth it? Most importantly, all relationships come down to needs. Every human being has a certain set of needs, and I've made videos on this before. So if you don't know what all the needs that your being has in order for you to thrive and become the greatest version of yourself, then definitely check out some of my earlier videos on under the relationships playlist. Now let's go into this a little bit deeper. What exactly do you need in a relationship? What are you looking for is the real question that I always ask individuals, that I had to ask myself along the years in order to have a successful relationship. What is the function of the relationship? Remember, it always comes down to needs, so understanding what you're getting out of the relationship is really important to understand what you need so you can become the fullness of who you are. A lot of human beings don't recognize this, but you do have control over your trajectory in life. Whether you're aware of this or not, you do have control over who you grow into and who you want to become. Now, it is a discovery and evolutionary process, but you can control it to some extent. You may not be able to control what comes in fully, but you'll have choice points. Everyone has choice points in their life, whether it's their career, their business, their family life, their societal life, all different aspects of our lives. We always have these choice points, and being aware when we're at a crossroads to make a certain choice point is really key to becoming the greatest version of who you want to become, if that's your goal in life, which it certainly is for me. And if you've been tracking my work, I'm guessing you're on a very similar path. If you've gotten to a point in your life where you know exactly what you're about, you know exactly what you want to create, you know exactly what you want to do, and you know exactly the direction that you're headed in, that's an awesome point to come to. I acknowledge you. It takes a lot of pain, a lot of mistakes, a lot of craziness to get there. But it's a beautiful space to come through. When you know who you want to be and how you want to create life and create your own being on your terms, I love when people get to this point. It took me 29 years to get there. I'm 30 now, and it wasn't until last year where I really understood, okay, this is who I am, this is how I want to live, this is who I want to be, and this is what I want to create. Now, granted, there's permutations of that will happen and occur in little growth off points and periods, but at some point you know exactly who you are and what you're about and how you want to show up for humanity and serve. And that's a really beautiful place and a powerful place to come through, and people will feel that level of commitment. So that's what we want to take into account when we're choosing a relationship. It's like, is this person going to help me become more of who I want to be, more of who I already am? The self is something that's created with all of its other connections. The self, it's not some random thing that happens or occurs in the space. It is its connections. But who you become is who you connect with. So it's really important to understand who we're connecting with and who we're allowing in our life. For me, I had that realization about 3 years ago. I just became very, very conscientious of who I led in my life and who I didn't. And in fact, I remember when I went through that stage, I moved across the United States, started up completely fresh, a whole new life in a new community, in a new place, and really let go of all my old relationships, all my old friends. And that was something that was really important because I knew that this newer, different being wanted to come through, and I wanted to honor that. There's nothing wrong with changing and shifting everything, but it's really important to recognize just exactly what wants to come through you and what type of environment, including people, can support that growth process. So now that I've talked about this enough, let's actually get into the 5 characteristics that I think we should really be aware of before you get deep into a committed relationship that you see as your divine partnership or your soul partnership. Number 1, growth. Do they want to grow? Do they want to grow emotionally? Do they want to grow spiritually? Do they want to grow financially? How do they want to grow? And we'll get into pacing a little bit later on, but really, are they about what you're about? Remember, we become the energy that we're connected to. So if you're going to be connected to a partner who is on a similar path as you, and you want to go down that path even further, having someone who's on that same trajectory or that same growth path is really valuable. Now, that doesn't always have to be the case. I know some couples who have very, very different lives, very different occupations, and they do a really great job. They do a really great job in the relationship, and that works for them. That being said, that might not be for everyone. Remember, relationships are all about what you need and what's really best for you and who do you want to grow into and how are they helping you get closer to your vision and what you're trying to accomplish. And just a little life note here, when it comes to relationship, don't ever try to start a new relationship and a new business venture at the same time. I learned that lesson 2 years ago. Not a good idea. Okay. I remember I was really with a very beautiful person, very sweet person, but I was still learning how to build my own work and my own business, and I didn't fully trust myself yet financially to build a successful business. I still had some financial fears, and that played out into the relationship. And looking back on it, I remember thinking, man, I could have had a really beautiful relationship with that person if I just known that I was safe financially, but I wasn't because I was starting a whole new business adventure. So whenever you're starting a new business venture, it's okay if you're pivoting in your business. That's normal. If you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to be pivoting in your business. But when it comes to starting something completely new, don't try to do a new relationship and a new business at the same time. I promise you, it's not a good idea. It's a lot of stress. I can look back at my life and probably say that was one of the most stressful points or periods of my life, and I never want to do that again, and frankly, I never will do that again. So if you're starting up a new business or you're going down a new path and you're starting up a new relationship, that's a lot to take on. Don't overwhelm yourself and don't make that same mistake. It's important to look at a person's growth and where they're at, but it's also really important to look at, what you're trying to grow and what you're trying to build for yourself, and if you guys are going to be able to manage both. Some people have the capability and skill set to get into a relationship and expand or start a new business. I shouldn't say expand, but start a new business. But that takes a lot of energy. And, looking back at that relationship, I realized that I could have had a good relationship if I was just aware or knew that everything that I was taking on, which I wasn't at the time. Number 2, values. Do you have similar values and priorities in life? Values are ultimately our actions. So it goes like this. We have our thoughts, and our thoughts create, and our level of belief in our thoughts create our emotional experience. And then our emotional experience of something creates our actions. Emotions drive our actions. And then our actions drive our patterns, and our patterns show us what our values are, what we really value. So wherever you're taking the most action in your life shows what you value. If you value just making an incredible amount of money all the time, 24/7, then you're probably working all the time. You're probably not too nice to other human beings, and I've been there at one point in my life, and that's okay. Just be in agreement and recognize that those are your value systems. One of the most important lessons I learned in life, there's so many, but one of the most important lessons that I learned was being in agreement with my values and being okay with my values. Accepting your values and really what you're about is an important part of going the fullest extent into something. Like, I remember I was coaching one individual, and they wanted to be in a relationship, but at the same time they were worried that that relationship would hold them back from being successful in business. And I could tell that they really valued money, and that money made them feel safe. And so I asked them, I said, are you really ready for a relationship where that's going to take up a lot of time and energy, and it's going to change your emotional capacity to show up in your business and expand that? Are you ready for that? And the person said, no, I'm actually not, and it's a little hard for me to say that, and I'm a little sad that I'm not ready. And I said, that's a great recognition. How about we work on that? And they got an agreement with themselves. They got an agreement with themselves saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to put 2 hours aside to work on myself emotionally and help myself develop the emotional skills to actually be ready for a powerful and good relationship. Whereas before, he was always just working really hard in his business, but wanted to have relationships, but would only go like 10 or 20% into the relationship because he wasn't in agreement with himself. He wasn't in agreement with his values and acknowledging, hey, you know what, I really value money, so maybe I should just find a woman who values money just as much as me, and that can be what we bond over and love over. And once he became in agreement with that value system, everything in his life got a little bit easier and straightened out because he was in full agreement with it. He was no longer fighting this desire of wanting to be in relationship and only going 20% but then pulling back, which wasn't committed at all. So we really want to be aware of our partner's values and see, do they reflect our own values? And if they don't reflect our own values, that's okay, but do you have the communication skills to recognize that, hey, they value something different than me, and that's perfectly fine. That's okay if they value something different than me. They don't have to have the same values, but it certainly helps to have similar values as long as you can communicate where your values might be different. Because if not, then what happens is arguments might arise. For instance, if you get home from work, you're really exhausted and tired, but you still got to do a couple business calls, but then your wife or your partner wants to hang out with you and spend time with you, and you say, no, I need to get on a call and finish this. Well, that's just you valuing your work, and she's valuing, love and affection. And if you don't give her that love and affection, then she might get upset at you and see you as a detriment to keeping her from getting that love and affection. And you might begin to see her as keeping you from having a successful, thriving business. So it's really important to recognize our values and our actions and how our actions are driven by our values and be able to communicate that. It's once we understand that we're all just trying to get our needs met, that's a beautiful place. That's a beautiful place to come to. You can communicate and work really with anything once you understand what a person needs and your own needs, and you have the ability to communicate and work with that. Number 3, capacity. Do they have the capacity? One of my clients who was a really wealthy businessman, he never had the capacity to be there for his wife emotionally, and he didn't really think much about it. And that played out in the relationship dynamic until she finally started really calling him out and giving him the whip, and then he realized, I've been ignoring this for a really long time and I just didn't know. And so we went deeper into that, and he learned emotional skills to be able to relate to his wife in a deeper way that created space for intimacy. So it's really important to ask yourself, does my partner, or this person who I'm committing to, have the emotional capacity to hold space for my heart, to hold space for my vision and what I want to create, and are they willing to show up for that day in and day out? If not, then that's okay. They're just not the right person for you. So many times I've seen in relationship, people breed resentment. They get resentful of another person, they get resentful of their partner, or they get upset or angry on a daily basis. If you're getting upset and angry on a daily basis and there's resentment there, well, it's simply just because you have some sort of expectation that you haven't communicated to them. You have some sort of emotional expectation, financial expectation, some type of expectation that you've placed upon them, and that they're feeling the responsibility for, but they clearly aren't living out. So it's important to recognize whether a person has the capacity to show up in the way that you need to meet your needs. Because if not, then it's not worth going in deeper into the relationship with, because if they don't have the capacity, why be in the relationship in the first place? You're just going to get upset and angry and resentful, and that's just going to create a lot more drama in your life, which is unnecessary. So it's really important to ask yourself, do I have the capacity, and does the other person have the capacity to show up in a way that I need for them to show up, so I can create a beautiful life for myself and a beautiful life with the other person. Number 4, capability and skill set. This is similar to capacity, just in a different way. For me, 2 years ago when I was with that woman, I didn't really have the capacity to show up in the way that I needed to, but I could have done a couple things better. And what I realized from that experience was, don't try to do too much at one time, because if you do, you're going to spread yourself too thin. And when you spread yourself too thin, then everything starts to fall through. So it's important to honor yourself in a way that honors who you are, what you're about, what you want, where you're at, but have a partner who can also see those things and really see what it is that you need and want in life, and honor them as well. And do they have the capability to do that? Do they have the skill set to do that? If you get in a relationship and you have great listening skills and communication skills, but your partner can't reciprocate that, then I promise you, upset or envy or jealousy will show up for you eventually, because you'll be able to listen to them and ask deep questions, and then they won't be able to show up in the way that you want them to, and that's not a fun way to do things. Why would you ever want to show up more for a person when they don't reciprocate that? So it's important to have your being honored in that way. Then finally, number 5, trajectory. Are you guys on the same trajectory? Are you able to grow at the same pace? Do you have similar trajectories? And are they willing to head down the similar path as you? Now, you guys don't have to have the exact same paths, but it certainly helps. When you have two people who are headed in the same direction, it makes things easier. Like for me, I don't think I would ever date anyone outside of my career, just because I want my problems and challenges to be understood, and I want their problems and challenges to be understood. And so when a person has the same career as you, it's pretty great, because then they can understand what's coming up or what's going on, and that actually creates a deeper intimacy for you two and allows you to be closer. Now, that's not necessary, that's just a personal preference, but it certainly helps to feel understood and seen and validated when they can really understand your world and what's going on, because that's their world and they're experiencing it. That's not always necessary, but it's definitely a bonus for sure. That's all I have for this time, you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. If you've liked what you've seen here, please subscribe or share with any family or friends. Also, if you want to, I have the Sacred Relationship series. I have about 2 more weeks left with that. I still have about 5 or 6 more interviews within the next 3 weeks. I'd be delighted for you guys to be a part of that if you want to join. I'm still doing some live coaching, still connecting with some of the top relationship coaches and therapists out there in the world. So be looking out for some of those interviews coming up as well too. I'd love for you to be a part of it. That's all I got for this time, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.